My room was turned into storage. Then they saw my name on the building's deed, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoy stories about justice being served in the most satisfying way possible, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now and ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss our daily uploads of revenge stories that will leave you shocked and satisfied. Now let's get into today's incredible story. I stared at the mountain of cardboard boxes stacked from floor to ceiling, in what used to be my bedroom. The air was thick with dust and the musty smell of neglect. Just 3 days ago, this had been my personal sanctuary, a modest but comfortable space I'd called home for the past 7 years. Now it was nothing more than a convenient storage closet for my stepmother's endless online shopping addiction. We needed the space, my father explained weakly, avoiding eye contact as he stood in the doorway. Diane thought it would be more practical, since you're hardly ever here anymore. I clenched my jaw, feeling the familiar burn of injustice rise in my chest. I'm hardly here because I'm working double shifts to pay for my master's degree, I said evenly, though my hands had curled into fists at my sides. Where exactly am I supposed to sleep when I come home? My father shifted uncomfortably. Well, there's always the couch in the basement. It pulls out into a bed. He glanced at his watch, a new luxury model I'd never seen before. Diane and I are meeting her parents for dinner. We'll talk more about this tomorrow, okay? And just like that, he was gone. The sound of the front door closing like a period at the end of a dismissive sentence. I stood motionless among the towers of designer shoeboxes and home decor that had displaced my existence, feeling something fundamental shift inside me. My childhood home, the house my biological mother had lovingly maintained until cancer took her 5 years ago, was no longer my home at all. And the man who had raised me to value family above all else had become a stranger wearing my father's face. Little did they know, the modest 2-story colonial they were so casually rearranging didn't actually belong to them at all. And the revelation that was coming would change everything. I grew up as the only child of Martin and Elaine Winters. My mother was a dedicated elementary school teacher, beloved by generations of students in our small town. My father was the steady, reliable manager of a local bank branch. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable, and our home was filled with warmth and laughter. When I was 17, my mother was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. The next 18 months were a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and hushed conversations behind closed doors. Through it all, I tried to be the rock my father needed, taking on household responsibilities, maintaining my grades, and hiding my own grief to spare him additional pain. After my mother passed, my father seemed to age overnight. The bank offered him compassionate leave, but he insisted on returning to work almost immediately, claiming the routine would help him cope. For nearly a year, we existed in a quiet, respectful mourning, each of us processing our loss in our own way. Then came Diane, a flashy new client at the bank who needed special assistance with her accounts after her divorce. Within 6 months, she had moved into our home. 3 months after that, they were married in a lavish ceremony that bore no resemblance to the modest, loving partnership my parents had shared for over 20 years. I tried to be supportive. My father deserved happiness, and if Diane made him happy, I would make peace with the dramatic changes to our household. I was in college by then, studying finance with plans to follow in my father's footsteps, so I was only home during breaks and occasional weekends anyway. But each visit revealed a home increasingly unrecognizable. My mother's carefully chosen furnishings disappeared, replaced by expensive, trendy items. Family photos were relegated to albums stored in the attic. Even the garden my mother had tenderly cultivated was ripped out to make way for a hot tub and entertainment area. Despite these changes, I maintained a polite relationship with my stepmother and focused on my studies. I graduated with honors and immediately enrolled in a prestigious MBA program, working nights and weekends at an accounting firm to cover the costs my scholarships didn't. My father had made it clear that while he supported my educational goals, Diane's 3 children from her previous marriage had college funds that needed attention now. I accepted this reality without complaint. My mother had raised me to be self-sufficient, and I was proud of making my own way. What I couldn't accept was being literally erased from the home she had created. As I stood among the boxes in my former bedroom, I realized I needed to make some decisions. I'd been patient, understanding, and accommodating for 5 years. But patience had its limits, and mine had just been reached. I began quietly observing and documenting the changes in my father's behavior and financial situation. Each visit home revealed new luxury purchases, designer clothes filling closets, a top-of-the-line home theater system, a second car for Diane, a sleek convertible she rarely drove. Meanwhile, my father looked increasingly tired, with new worry lines etched around his eyes. During one dinner visit, I carefully steered the conversation toward the bank. "How's work going, Dad? Still enjoying being branch manager?" He hesitated. "Just a fraction too long. Actually, I've taken a step back, more of an advisory role now. Less stress, more time to enjoy life." The statement didn't match the exhaustion evident on his face. Later that evening, I accidentally glimpsed his pay stub on the desk in what used to be his home office, but was now Diane's creative space. The advisory position paid substantially less than his management role. I began researching property records for our home, pulling bank statements from the joint account my father and I still maintained for emergencies, and discreetly speaking, with my father's longtime colleagues at the bank. A concerning picture emerged. My father had withdrawn substantial amounts from his retirement accounts, incurring penalties in the process. Credit card statements showed ballooning debt, and Diane, I discovered, had a history of 3 previous marriages, each ending after significant financial entanglements. Most crucially, I discovered something about our family home that even my father seemed to have forgotten. When my maternal grandmother had passed away a decade earlier, she had left the house not to my parents, but directly to me in an irrevocable trust, with my parents as lifetime beneficiaries. The arrangement had been a tax strategy recommended by our family attorney, and since my parents had planned to leave me the house eventually anyway, they had simply signed the paperwork and filed it away. The house I was being gradually excluded from was, legally, mine. I consulted discreetly with the original attorney who had set up the trust. He confirmed my understanding and expressed concern about potential violations of the trust terms, which specified that the property was to remain a family home, not to be substantially altered without consent from all beneficiaries, including me. I also spoke with my mother's sister, my Aunt Catherine, who lived in another state but had maintained close contact with me. She shared disturbing observations from her recent visit, including overhearing Diane discussing plans to eventually sell that outdated house and move to a luxury condo downtown. Armed with this knowledge, I implemented a careful plan. First, I took a week off from work and school to conduct a thorough inventory of the house, photographing every room and documenting which items had belonged to my mother. I recovered family photos from the attic and secured them off-site. I checked the safety deposit box my mother had maintained and found her journal, which detailed the purchase of various household items and family heirlooms. Next, I contacted the bank where my father worked and requested a private meeting with the regional manager, an old family friend. Without directly accusing anyone, I expressed concern about my father's abrupt demotion and the unusual financial activities on his accounts. As I suspected, my father's step back had not been voluntary but was the result of multiple cash advances taken against his work credit card. Advances my father claimed were for family emergencies. I requested copies of the loan applications and other financial documents bearing my father's signature over the past 3 years. A handwriting expert later confirmed my suspicions. Many had been signed by someone else. The final piece fell into place when I retrieved the original deed and trust documents from the county records office. With these in hand, along with documentation of the extensive unauthorized changes to the property, I was ready for the conversation that would change everything. That Sunday, I arrived at the house unannounced, carrying a sleek leather portfolio containing all the evidence I had gathered. I found Diane directing two workmen who were measuring the walls in the living room, the last space that still contained pieces of my mother's furniture. "Oh, you're here," she said, making no effort to hide her annoyance. "We're just planning. Some updates. This old-fashioned furniture has got to go." She waved dismissively at my mother's antique side table, the one where we had displayed family photos for as long as I could remember. "Where's my dad?" I asked calmly. "In the garage, I think, though I don't know why we keep all that junk out there." She turned back to the workman. "I'm thinking built-in shelving along this entire wall, and we'll need to expand the window here." I found my father in the garage, sorting through boxes of tools, my grandfather's tools, which had been passed down to him. "Dad, we need to talk. Family meeting, right now." Something in my tone must have alerted him. He looked up, really seeing me for the first time in months. "What's wrong?" "Living room. 5 minutes. It's important." When we gathered, I opened my portfolio and began methodically laying out documents on the coffee table. The property deed, the trust agreement, the bank statements, the loan applications with forged signatures, the inventory of missing family heirlooms. "What is all this?" Diane demanded, her voice sharp with irritation. "This," I said, tapping the deed, "is the legal documentation proving that this house belongs to me. It was left to me by my grandmother in an irrevocable trust, with my parents as lifetime beneficiaries, provided the home remains a family residence and is not substantially altered without my consent." My father's face drained of color. "But that was just a tax arrangement. Your mother and I—" "It was a legally binding arrangement," I corrected gently, "and while I have no desire to enforce it against you, Dad, I do have concerns about the substantial alterations being made without my knowledge or consent, as well as the apparent plan to sell the property." Diane's expression hardened. "This is ridiculous. Martin, tell him this is our house." "Actually," I continued, sliding forward the financial documents, "I'm also concerned about these loans and credit applications bearing Dad's signature. Signatures that a handwriting expert has identified as forgeries, and these bank statements showing withdrawals from his retirement accounts that coincide with major purchases of luxury items." The workmen, sensing the tension, quietly excused themselves. My father sank into his chair looking devastated. "I don't understand. The loans were for your college fund, Diane. You said—" "She has no college fund, Dad. She dropped out of community college after 1 semester. I checked." The confrontation that followed was both painful and necessary. Diane screamed, threatened, and finally stormed out when I calmly informed her that I had already spoken with the police about the forgery evidence and had an appointment with them tomorrow. My father sat in stunned silence, looking through the documentation with trembling hands. "I didn't know," he kept saying. "I trusted her. I wanted to believe someone could love me again after your mother." "I know, Dad," I said gently. "And I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to protect you, and to protect what Mom built for us." In the weeks that followed, Diane moved out, taking only her personal belongings after I presented her with a detailed inventory of what belonged to the estate and what didn't. My father filed for divorce and began working with the bank to address the financial damage. I took a leave of absence from my graduate program to help him sort through the mess, moving back into my old bedroom, which we promptly cleared of Diane's excess purchases and returned to its original purpose. The healing process wasn't quick or easy. My father struggled with shame and grief over his gullibility and the disrespect he had shown to my mother's memory. But gradually, as we worked together to restore the home to something that honored our family's history while still allowing for new beginnings. Our relationship strengthened. Today, 3 years later, our home is truly ours again. My father has retired properly. With what remains of his pension supplemented by part-time work he genuinely enjoys at a local bookstore. I completed my MBA and now manage investments, including the trust that still legally owns our family home. Most importantly, my mother's garden flourishes once more, tended by both my father and me on Sunday afternoons. The family photos have returned to their rightful places, and in the living room, my mother's antique side table still displays the moments that matter most, now including new photos of my father and me rebuilding the life that almost slipped away. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't about destroying those who wrong you, but about preserving what truly matters, and helping those you love remember what's important before it's too late. If you enjoyed this story of justice and family redemption, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with others who might need a reminder that sometimes standing your ground is the most loving thing you can do. Your support helps us continue bringing these powerful, real-life stories to light. Thank you for watching.